The man stepped closer, and the heat from the afternoon sun did not seem to touch him. His eyes never left the group of teens, and the way he moved was deliberate, as if every step had been calculated in advance. The woman in the wheelchair clutched the dog closer and felt a strange mix of fear and relief. The teens whispered to each other, trying to act tough, but the confidence that had made them cruel moments ago seemed to falter. Their smirks began to tremble, and one of them shifted nervously on his foot, but the man did not speak at first, and his silence stretched long enough to make the air feel heavy with tension. The smallest of the teens decided to throw the first punch. He stepped forward with a scowl on his face and a sense of recklessness that only youth can bring. His hand rose, and the world seemed too slow for a heartbeat as the man's eyes tracked him. Effortlessly then, with a sudden move that seemed almost casual, the man blocked the punch and grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. The teen stumbled back, surprised and scared, while the others froze, unsure of what to do next. They realized for the first time that they had no idea who they were dealing with. The woman tried to speak, but her voice trembled. She wanted to tell the man to be careful, but she could only whisper for the dog whose tail wagged. Nervously sensing the tension that hung thicker than the summer air, the dog barked softly, as if urging her to stay calm, while the man's gaze swept the street again, looking for any other threats. The teens whispered curses to each other, and the bravest one tried to step forward, but his courage faltered when he saw the way the man's jaw tightened and his eyes narrowed in a way that seemed to promise consequences. Suddenly, a car drove slowly down the street, and the sound made the teens jump. They looked around, and the woman felt a flicker of panic. The man did not move, but his eyes followed the car with suspicion. The vehicle slowed and then passed, leaving a faint cloud of dust behind, but it was enough to make everyone feel watched. The woman gripped the wheelchair handles tightly, and the dog barked once more at the sound behind the hedge. But when the car disappeared, the tension did not leave, and she wondered if the danger was over or if it was only beginning. One of the teens decided that fear could be ignored. He laughed loudly, trying to show he was still in control, and kicked at the dog again. The animal yelped, and the woman cried out. Her voice was soft but sharp, and it seemed to slice through the moment. The man moved faster than anyone expected and grabbed the teen by the shoulder, lifting him off balance with ease. The others gasped and stepped back, unsure if they should intervene or flee. The woman's heart raced, and she felt a strange sense of disbelief at the strength and precision of the man in front of her. But she also knew that the street had changed in an instant and nothing would ever feel the same. The man then turned his attention to the other teens who were frozen in place. Their bravado had drained away like water from a cracked cup, and fear replaced arrogance. He spoke in a voice that was low and calm, but each word landed heavy. In the street they could hear every syllable, and it seemed to echo in their heads, making their stomachs churn. The woman felt a shiver run down her spine, because she could sense that the man had seen far worse than this and had survived it all. She glanced down at the dog, who pressed closer to her and seemed to understand that something dangerous had been stopped but not ended. The teens tried to back away slowly, but the man's eyes followed them relentlessly, like a hawk watching prey. They reached the edge of the sidewalk and paused, glancing over their shoulders, hoping the man would not move. But he only stood still, his presence alone a warning that left them trembling inside. They whispered among themselves, plotting silently for a way to escape without humiliation. The woman wondered how anyone could appear so calm, yet so powerful at the same time, and why her heart was pounding, as if she was about to face something bigger than herself. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from a nearby alley, and the sound made everyone jump. The man's gaze snapped to the source instantly, and his body tensed as if preparing for an attack. The woman squeezed the dog closer and felt a wave of fear mixed with curiosity. The teens looked at each other and then at the man, unsure if they should run or stay. They realized that the noise could mean something far worse was coming, and the street that had seemed quiet a moment ago now felt like the stage for a storm. The man took a step toward the alley, and his movements were silent and controlled. He did not speak, but the intensity of his presence made the teens feel as if the ground itself was shaking beneath them. The woman tried to ask him what was happening, but no words came out. As the sound from the alley grew louder and closer, the dog barked sharply, as if warning them all of a threat that was approaching quickly. The woman's eyes widened, and she realized that nothing in her life had prepared her for what was about to unfold. The man's gaze never left the alley as he positioned himself between the woman and the teens. His stance was steady and deliberate, as if he had done this countless times before. The woman gripped the handles of her wheelchair tighter and held the dog close, feeling the rhythm of its heartbeat matching her own. The teens were frozen like statues, unsure whether to flee or confront the stranger whose calmness seemed to radiate Power beyond their understanding. From the alley, a shadow emerged, moving quickly but deliberately. It was hard to make out what it was, but the sound of footsteps echoed like warnings against the walls. The woman felt her stomach knot as the figure grew closer, and the dog growled softly beneath her hands. The man did not flinch, his eyes narrowing as he read the motion of the approaching figure with precision that sent chills down the spines of the teens. They whispered among themselves in panic, realizing that the street had changed into a place where fear had a new master. Suddenly the figure lunged forward, and the man reacted instantly, grabbing the shadow and twisting it with skill that left no room for resistance. The woman gasped at the speed of the movement as the dog barked frantically. The teens backed up, tripping over each other in shock. Their laughter had vanished, and a cold dread settled in their chests. They realized that the power dynamic had shifted completely, and they were no longer in control. The man pinned the figure to the ground with a look that promised consequences beyond words. The woman could see that it was not just brute strength, but training and experience that guided every move. His calm voice cut through the tension, asking questions, the answers to which seemed to carry a weight of life and death. The dog whimpered softly, as if sensing the danger but also sensing the protection that the man provided. They all waited in tense silence, unsure what would happen next and what the shadow had been planning. The teens tried to sneak away, but the man's eyes caught every motion. It was like he could see through the air itself. Their bravado had crumbled completely, and one of them whispered a name that made the others freeze. The woman realized that the man's presence was enough to hold danger at bay, and that he was not someone ordinary, but someone who had faced threats most could not imagine. The dog wagged its tail tentatively, sensing that the immediate danger was held in check, but not gone completely. From the alley more sounds came, faint but deliberate footsteps that hinted at others approaching. The man's body tensed, as if reading invisible lines in the air. He shifted his stance slightly without losing focus on the woman or the dog. The teens huddled together, trying to understand the invisible rules that governed the street now, and realized with fear that they were completely exposed. The woman tried to speak, but her voice caught in her throat as she felt the weight of the moment. Suddenly, the pinned figure struggled and managed to wriggle slightly. The man tightened his grip with a swift movement that left the teens gasping. The shadow struggled again, but it was clear the man's skill was unmatched. He did not speak, but the woman felt the authority in every motion and the calm in every breath. The dog barked sharply at the movement of the figure, sensing the continued threat lurking in the shadows. They all knew that the next few seconds would determine what happened on the street. A distant siren wailed, and the sound made the tension stretch even further. The man glanced briefly in its direction, and then back to the teens and the pinned figure. His attention was unwavering. His gaze carried a message that the teens understood immediately. They could not escape what they had done or the consequences that were waiting for them. The woman squeezed the dog closer, feeling the protective presence beside her and realizing that she might finally be safe, but only for now. The pinned figure went still, and the man slowly released him, but his eyes never left him. The teens shivered as they realized that strength alone was not what had controlled the street, but strategy and experience that none of them possessed. The woman exhaled a breath she had not realized she had been holding, and the dog sniffed cautiously at the figure on the ground. But even in relief, the shadow of fear lingered, and she knew that the moment of calm was fragile and could shatter in an instant. The man finally turned to her, his expression unreadable but gentle. His hands rested briefly on the wheelchair handles, as if confirming her safety. The woman felt a strange mixture of gratitude and awe as she looked at the dog, who wagged its tail slowly, sensing the end of immediate danger. The teens backed away slowly, their faces pale and shaken, realizing that their cruelty had met a force they could not comprehend. The street seemed to hold